Welcome to See You on the Other Side, where the world of the mysterious collides with the world of entertainment. A discussion of art, music, movies, spirituality, the weird, and self-discovery. And now, your hosts, musicians and entertainers who have their own weakness for the weird, Mike and Wendy from the band Sunspot.
I just have a quick announcement before we start the show. This weekend, June 23rd and 24th, Mike and I are going to be at the Haunted America Conference in Alton, Illinois. If you happen to be going, please make sure and say hello to us. If you see us anywhere, you'll be able to find us at our See You on the Other Side booth in the vendor area. We'll also be attending a lot of the presentations going on, and you'll probably be able to find us at the hotel bar during any of the conference downtime and at the end of the day. Also, we're going to do a special live performance of some of the songs we've written for this podcast on Friday, the 23rd of June at 5 p.m. So we hope to see you there. And now on to today's episode.
I'm so excited that this week is the summer solstice.
Oh, yes. And it's Make Music Day on that day.
It is Make Music Day. And this year we are celebrating the solstice. I mean, we're not going to we're not sacrificing a goat or anything like that. They will have a drum circle at the park by my house, of course, on the solstice.
Uh-oh.
All the hippies in Madison get together. And
I was going to say, better get ready for naked people.
Right. And they
They go hand in hand with drum circles, don't they?
They do. They bring out their bongos, and everybody goes to play by the lake in the summer solstice. But the way we are sacrificing our goat this year on the summer solstice is by playing 3 acoustic shows on Wednesday.
Woohoo, yeah, that'll be fun. We're going to be running all over Madison from one place to the next, setting up, performing, and taking off.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, your city, wherever it is, might be running the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
So this started in Paris in like the 1980s or something. La Fête de Musique.
Ah, Paris, c'est magnifique.
And I actually was there for one of them, and I thought it was pretty sweet. And I was like, why are there just people playing music in the street? And not that people don't usually play music in the street, but it was every corner. There was like amplifiers and things like that. I'm like, what?
Every musician was out.
Yes.
At the same time.
I'm like, what the heck is going on? And this was, a few years ago. And then I looked it up on the internet, whatever. And they have the thing in Paris, and they've had it since the 80s, where they try to film music in every street corner on the summer solstice. And we have that in Madison too, called Make Music Madison. And then, so we'll be celebrating anyway. We just want to let you know about.
Yeah, I think it's a neat tradition for that date.
Mm-hmm. But I also think that it's the holiday that a lot of us forget about. So this Wednesday, the 21st of June, 2017, when you're out there on Wednesday, just remember it's the longest day of the year. So try to enjoy it, or you don't have to celebrate. You don't have to go pagan style or hippie style or even music style. Just find a way to enjoy your solstice day, because it is an awesome holiday.
Definitely, I agree.
Anyway, so we're excited about that.
Yes. And we had a big weekend, so we're coming off of that and just rolling right into it. Had the Between the Waves Music Festival here in Madison, which was the first year of its existence.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun. Mike, you were very involved in it.
Yes, I was. I was running all the tech for the presenters, and we had some seriously interesting presenters.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a music conference where people talk about different music-related topics. But like they had the Avett Brothers, an Americana band, do like a session on songwriting and singing. Kip Winger from the band Winger, and also Grammy-nominated classical artist, he did a whole session on the way he writes songs and his history and things like that. There wasn't enough paranormal for me.
I agree.
I was hoping, Butch Vig, who does all of the, he's the drummer for Garbage, and he's the guy that produced Nevermind by Nirvana, Smashing Pumpkins, Sparkle and Fade by Everclear. Anyway, if you like any kind of 90s rock music, Butch Vig's hand was somewhere near the dials.
Yes.
On there. And it was actually recorded in Madison. A lot of it was recorded in Madison. But anyway, so we did a session with Butch, and I was hoping he'd have some kind of haunted studio story, but I wasn't the one directing the questions, so I couldn't sneak that in there and be like, Butch, tell us about a haunted studio.
Yeah.
The one person I did ask a haunted question of was the woman who works at the Les Paul Foundation.
Oh, right.
Okay. So
yeah, well,
go ahead.
Because Les Paul was from Waukesha, Wisconsin, and
yes.
I know this because as the ghost tour guide for the Waukesha Ghost Tour, I learned some things about that. But they have the giant Les Paul guitar artwork all over the downtown Waukesha. And so you asked if they had any stories related to him or things that he experienced?
Did Les Paul ever, because this woman for the foundation, she spent hours and hours and hours interviewing Les Paul and talking to him. Now, if you guys don't know who he was a famous musician in the 1930s and 40s. I mean, all the way up to 1950s. And he basically invented a lot of the technology that musicians use. So he was a pioneer in electric guitars. There's still a guitar named after him, Les Paul. Slash plays it. If you know what Slash or Zakk Wylde from Ozzy's band plays it. Tons of famous people play the Les Paul guitars. But he was an inventor. He pioneered that guitar. He pioneered like different track recording. So like whenever you're doing a layering of music or even just talking, that's called like different track recording. So you lay down a track, then you lay down another one, then you lay down another one. Les Paul came up with that. Like he so
amazing.
Yeah, he figured out how to do it. And in addition to being like a rock star. And so it's just an amazing, interesting person. But I was like, oh my God, you spent hours talking to him. Like we have this haunted tour of Waukesha, and the Les Paul guitars are everywhere. And just wondering, does Les Paul have any ghost stories? And she said no. That was it. She's like, you know what? It never seemed that it just wasn't something he was interested in. You know, even as he was approaching facing his own mortality. And after the death of his wife, Mary Ford, he didn't talk about ghosts.
Well, Mike, as we know, it's one of those things. People either are really into it or somewhat into it, or they're just not at all.
Right, or they just don't care.
So,
they just don't think about it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for trying anyway.
Yeah. Well, if there was any person who would know, besides Les himself, it would be her. Because she's the one who helped, she's helping chronicle his life and keeping on his legacy. My mother's like that. Like, if it weren't for horror movies, she wouldn't, the idea of any kind of supernatural stuff. And she's a churchgoer, but the idea of supernatural stuff, she'd just look at you and be like, get out of here.
Yeah. I get that sometimes when I tell people about our podcast. I get kind of like the eye roll, head shake. Right. It's just like, okay, well, if you're not into it, that's okay.
Well, one of the reasons I think that that this makes a good segue into it is because it's those people are skeptical. They're just naturally skeptical about these phenomena, about ghosts, about UFOs, about Bigfoot, and we tend to. I think really there is a real negative vibe against skeptics in the paranormal world. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, sure, definitely. Yeah. Because they're like the poo-poo party people.
Right, they're always bringing the party down. But the thing is, in the second part of our conversation, so this is the second part of a two-part conversation with UFO author Robbie Graham and UFO author Mike Clelland, who are part of this new book it's a great book that Robbie has edited called UFOs Reframing the Debate. The second part of our conversation, this is really covers skepticism. And really covers why skepticism is important.
Yes. And if you haven't heard part 1 yet, please check it out. It's at othersidepodcast.com/148 or just episode 148 in your podcast player. But you'll want to hear the first half of it leading up to this because it's pretty interesting.
It's super fascinating. And also, it's all about a concept called high strangeness. Mm-hmm. And high strangeness is a term that was coined by Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who used to be the person from Project Blue Book, the Air Force study into UFOs in the 1960s and 70s. Anyway, Dr. Hynek will also be the focus of our episode next week, as we have his chronicler, new biography about Dr. Hynek has just been released, and we're doing the interview tomorrow night. So this kind of all connects. So if any of the high strangeness stuff or skepticism interests you, you're going to want to subscribe to the podcast, othersidepodcast.com/subscribe. You're going to want to go there, get on the list, and make sure you subscribe to the podcast in your favorite podcatcher, if it be iTunes or Stitcher or something like that, because we're definitely covering topics over the next few weeks that you're going to really enjoy. So without further ado, let's go to UFOs Reframing the Debate, Part 2.
I don't know. It just feels like that's not what we have those. We have file cabinets full of those. We have there's websites just cataloging and archiving those stuff.
Well, have you guys seen the documentary, The Man Who Sees UFOs, right? The documentary.
I have seen it, yeah.
And, he sees some weird stuff in the sky, like little, just little lights moving all around. And by the time, if you're with him for 6 months, by the end of it, you're like, well, those little lights aren't doing anything, so who cares? Like what's the real? So I know what you're saying, that you do have you keep reading experiences and you keep reading about it, and in the end, you're like, is there anything to do with all that information? And Allison, I was interested in your perspective too, because I know you and I used to have the same kind of idea about, of course, the government conspiracies and things like that. But when you saw something, how did that change your mind?
Well, what I saw is not as dramatic as the stories that we're hearing today. It was just a UFO because it's still unidentified, and it was in a situation where I'm just driving to work in the morning, and I saw strange objects in the sky. They were rectangles, and there were two of them, and inside the rectangles were three lights, I guess, or circles. I mean, it was the full light of day. But they looked brighter than the rest of it. I thought that they were lights, just three lights in a row in a rectangle, and then another just like it, a little bit off to the side and lower than the other one. And it's, when things happen to me, usually they're so fleeting, but they still happen, and I'm like, hey, what is that thing? And what do you do? What do you do? You're on the expressway. I was valiantly trying to take pictures with my phone,
endangering the drivers of Milwaukee.
That's right, life and limb.
Did it change your ideas of, like, when we were talking about here, and some of the things that Mike is describing are almost, it's beyond visual. I look, you see something with your eyes that's weird, but then if you have a feeling associated with it that goes beyond the visual, did you have that? And did you smell sulfur outside of whatever you had for breakfast?
I did. Yeah, I'm always smelling sulfur, if you know what I mean. No, I did not have any other senses. It was just these strange things in the sky, and I'm going through the list. Is it flares? But that didn't work. Is it a drone? No, I've seen drones. You go through all these things, and you're like, what was it? And then you're at work, and then it's over. So, the biggest aha moment for me in that experience was that. And I've seen this more and more lately, where strange things happen, but you just have to go on with regular life, and you don't know what to do with it. You don't know, where do you put that experience in this very narrow concept that our dominant culture seems to have of life. I think you just discard it.
You do a podcast.
Now there's other.
That's true.
well, that's true. But there's other subjective experiences that I've had that I've shared with you, Mike, like my experiences with a trickster entity. I work at a Native American school, and at one point we felt, a lot of the people there felt that, there may have been a trickster at play. And so I broke my ankle, and there's at least one person in the building that when I say refer to that time when I broke my ankle, she's like, nope, you did not do that. It was done to you. But I have to acknowledge that there were strange experiences that are very subjective, like you're saying, Mike, that happened along with that, which make me see. Originally I wouldn't have chalked it up to a trickster, but then when there's these little subjective jokes that happen and things that make you question reality with animals, not with. I had one experience this year with that I felt was related to this trickster entity, where it was like calling my attention to something by having these little these baby ground squirrels, chipmunks. They just came out of the forest. I was measuring a mushroom. That's what I was doing there. I was standing measuring a mushroom, and then these baby chipmunks kept spilling out of the forest, like right at my feet. And then they would run back in, and I'm like, hey, I'm not Snow White. What are you guys doing? But then that kind of called my attention to something else I had been wondering about, and so I think we have to watch for what is going on in our environment, and when we see something that is a clue that maybe some non-ordinary reality is at play, we should pay attention to it and then see what comes, see what synchronicities come. There may be a message in it for us, and I know how that sounds. It's not really accepted in this dominant culture, but in other cultures, it is, and it's a different way of knowing. And I think we need to embrace these different ways of knowing, just as we embrace science.
I mean, from what you've just said there, Alison, you could have written one of the essays in the book. I mean, all of the themes that you've just touched on there are explored throughout the book, including the trickster concept. But those essays and those ideas form only one aspect of the book, because, as I say, that I think the value in what we've done here, if there is value in it, is that we are presenting conflicting perspectives within one volume, so that we are almost playing trickster ourselves in the sense that we confound the reader, ask them to think outside the box and make them uncomfortable and infuriate them. As you said, Mike, at the beginning, that it's an infuriating book. It is, and that's the point. Why read something that just confirms what you already feel comfortable in believing? If you don't challenge yourself to explore new ideas and push yourself into critical thought, then you're just going to stay stuck in your ideological mud.
That's how I felt. I had to force myself to finish Smiles Lewis's essay, because that to me was too much. It was like, okay, what is this? Is this Madame Blavatsky or whatever we're talking? It was going on, and I'm like, is this a parody? But the thing is, at the end of it, I mean, I did even find a quote to put in the notes and stuff like that I thought was interesting. So sometimes when you're reading something where you don't feel comfortable or you don't agree, you got to push yourself to make it to the end, and then even if you question your own ideas a little bit, or it gets you thinking something new at the end of it, then it's worth reading, because you've gotten some growth out of it.
That's the idea. Yeah, the whole book is really a thought experiment. It is. We achieve what we do, I think, if we do achieve anything, through the content of the essays themselves, but also through the way that they're presented. And it will, whether you're a skeptical believer, for lack of more nuanced terms, you will find something within the book that will please you and offend you. Sometimes, from essay to essay.
Sometimes on the same page.
Well, I mean, I think that's, when you have a work of greatness, I mean, that's kind of how you tell, is does it really stretch you? Does it challenge you? Like the trickster, is it trying to teach you something in all this frustration? So you guys should be very proud of what you created, because I think for us to figure out what's going on with UFOs, we have to go through some kind of cultural evolution and really question reality, really question our perceptions. There's so much that we need to do, like Mike was saying earlier about not being able to wrap his head around certain things in the past, and now coming to the point where he can't accept that. I think as a species, we need to move towards more acceptance, not less.
Well, and Mike, I know that you had a little bit more to say as we were talking about the men who saw UFOs. Right before I jumped on and Alison shared the experience, you had a little bit more to say, so I kind of wanted to get back to you so we didn't miss out on that perspective.
Oh, that movie kind of bugged me. I thought that the guy was, he was an easy target to make fun of, and they kind of it felt like a little bit of the stuff was a little mean-spirited, how they but it's surprisingly common, the number of people who actually just go out and videotape UFOs. It's really not, it's sort of common. There's a lot of people that I know that you could make that same documentary about them. And oftentimes those little dots in the sky are there. It's kind of infuriating in the sense that that's what oftentimes when on video, you just get these weird little dots, that do these kind of things. They stay out at the edge. People the people don't have a close up of the UFO landed in the backyard. It's an elusive little speck in the sky, and the problem is our vision is much different, right? I mean, obviously, if you try to take a photograph of the moon, a full moon at night, and then you look at the picture, you take it with your phone, especially, and it looks like you look at the picture, it's a dot, So Yeah, this is very elusive. It's very elusive. So that one documentary is surprisingly common. So here, this is part of my evolution in this, funny way, is I used to, so I was so needy in a way. I was going to these UFO conferences, and I would, I would kind of shave and wear a blazer and kind of, wear a shirt that wasn't wrinkly and kind of, did my best to be presentable. And you're in a conference situation, you want people to take you seriously. So you'd do like,
hello, crazy ladies.
Well, a little more like, hey, I want to talk to you and I want to be taken seriously, because there's UFO conventions the caricature is real. There's some weirdos there. So,
awesome.
But, so I'd talk to the guy who's collecting government documents, and I'd walk across and I'd talk to the lady who is channeling aliens, and I'd talk to the next person who's, getting the metallurgical tests of little fragments of something that he found in the deserts of New Mexico, and then you talk to the psychic lady, and it's so I was comfortable sort of playing both both sides of the field. I could be completely at peace talking to the nuts and bolts crew, and then I could be completely at peace talking to the flighty New Age people who say, oftentimes they'll say things, they'll editorialize their own experience in a way that kind of makes my toes curl in my shoes sometimes, but I think they would also share the real experiences that they've had, and I've heard those stories so many times now. But anyway, so there came a point when I did a presentation. This was at the conference in the International UFO Congress, and the very first talk I gave on a stage was there, which is kind of a big deal. It's a big conference. So there I was, as the same person. I'd been to the conference a bunch of years in a row, so I kind of knew folks, and all of a sudden I had a name tag on it. It said speaker, and you could look in the little catalog, and it would say, Mike Clelland, owls, synchronicity, and the UFO abductee. It doesn't get any more, trippy and out there than that. And I recognized it. It was so different, the experience of being in that conference, when I had a name tag that had my, basically like a blinking yellow light that said, or blinking red light that said, New Age weirdo. And I was shunned by the nuts and bolts people. That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but that's what it felt like. And I was so embraced by the Love and Light crew. So it was all of a sudden I lost the ability to be the honeybee that could just flit from flower to flower to flower. And I was sort of sucked into one corner and wasn't accepted by the other corner. And it was a remarkable experience in the sense that I sensed it right away that, like, oh my gosh, when you, like, I don't look New Agey, and though the stuff that comes out of my mouth is as nutty as it gets. But so that to me was a really telling experience, that, like, oh my God, there is this gulf. And obviously I recognized the gulf was there, but I was capable of, just drinking from, and I think all these aspects are important. I think that the weird conspiracy stuff is, there's reasons that I think there's where there's smoke, there's fire. And I think that it's really easy to get dragged down blind alleys and such, but yes, for me that was a powerful experience. Yeah.
Could I quickly just say as well there I should clarify, and I've done this in a couple of interviews. I should clarify. I mean, the book that we've put out here, as I say, it's a clash of pro and anti-materialist approaches. Some people sort of even question whether there is a phenomenon at all, and we should take it right back down to basics and examine if there's anything to study whatsoever, whereas other people sort of take it at face value because of their own experiences that there is indeed an anomalous phenomenon and try to approach it from new angles. So there's all sorts of different perspectives represented. As for me, as editor, I've tried to challenge myself and make myself uncomfortable by presenting these different perspectives. But for what it's worth, in terms of my own opinion, I am probably more sympathetic to the extraterrestrial hypothesis than probably most or even all of the contributors to the book. I don't stamp that as an opinion in the book because it's about the contributors really, but I'm far less sympathetic to the simplistic ETH than I was, say, 4 or 5 years ago. But at the same time, I still think that it does have logic to it. It does have a good amount of surface logic to it, the extraterrestrial hypothesis, given what we know about the size of the universe, the scale at which we're discovering habitable exosolar planets, extrasolar planets, excuse me. And so yeah, it's still is an attractive hypothesis that should not be rejected. But what we're saying is that, again, if you go back to the basics of the grassroots reports, what we're dealing with seems to be more complex and multifaceted, and more ethereal even, and more related to something within us as individuals or as a species than it does to something external necessarily. Not to rule out the extraterrestrial hypothesis. We could be dealing with multiple converging, coalescing phenomena, which may include some form of extraterrestrial intelligence, but may not. But the idea is that all ideas should be considered, and we should never reach a solid conclusion, at least not at this early stage, because it is an early stage. The modern UFO phenomenon, as we understand it today, if we take it from 1947, is only about 7 decades old, and so that's very young, and we are as a species incredibly young anyway, and so we barely understand our own brains. So I think that's where we should begin, really, not necessarily looking elsewhere.
When Darwinism was 7 decades old, we understood dinosaurs. When ufology is 7 decades old, we got the Roswell Slides.
Right. Right. So and of course we examine the Roswell Slides, or we examine how the Roswell Slides, the infamous Roswell Slides, were effectively debunked. By a courageous...
I want to get to that too in a little bit. I have a couple questions about it.
Well, I was wondering, so we have the extraterrestrial hypothesis, but what about the other explanations, the other hypotheses? Are we talking fairies, tricksters, jinn, ultra-terrestrials, dimensional visitors, human time travelers from the future, breakaway civilizations? What are we talking here?
Wait, what's an ultra-terrestrial? Is that like an extraterrestrial that runs an extra 26 miles? Hey, thank you. I'll be here all week.
But all of these hypotheses, have been considered, and all of them, I would say, probably to an extent, are touched upon, albeit fleetingly, in the book. We don't dwell on the ETH. We talk about the ETH if only to sort of put it to one side. No one really rejects the ETH in the book, but it's certainly put to one side in order to explore new avenues. Those new avenues in the book don't necessarily extend to sort of time travel or ultra-terrestrials or interdimensionals, although again some of those things are briefly touched upon. I think a lot of the focus is more about turning the attention from the external to the internal, trying to understand the very complex processes of human cognition and consciousness. Because the more we understand about these things, the more we understand about the world around us, and how we actually, to a large extent, or to a significant extent, shape the world around us through our own perceptions, through our own perceptual apparatus. And so we turn the attention on ourselves as complex machines, I guess, in one sense. That's one approach that some of the people adopt. Some people, one of the essays is sort of rejecting materialism altogether, and sort of saying that we need to sort of adopt an almost magical approach to the phenomenon. And then you'll have an essay that follows that directly, sort of completely rejecting those ideas and saying we need to take it down to a much more nuts and bolts basic level, and even ask what we know, if we know anything at all about what we're dealing with, and if there is anything to deal with, full stop. And so some of the essays are very pragmatic, practical, whereas some of them are very theoretical and sort of up in the air in terms of, I mean, would you agree with that, Mike?
Sure. Oh, yeah. Oh, which Mike? Yeah.
I guess we all agree.
All of them. Yes, the whole group's in agreement. We're talking about some of the hypotheses here, and connecting the extraterrestrial to more things like Allison was saying, fairies and tricksters, and obviously jinn is BS.
Hey,
but
Mike,
that's just me.
Just because you can't wrap your head around it yet.
I'm just fooling around. I was just introduced to the jinn as an idea that smart people think might be real.
Right,
last
so you're
year.
still working on it.
So I'm still trying to get my head around it. But you think about poltergeist activity being related to UFOs, or I love in Josh Cutchin, when he was talking about sulfur and that sulfur associated with Bigfoot and UFOs and poltergeist experiences and ghost experiences, the idea of it as a chemical, and this connected a couple of things. Like in the notes, Allison, one thing you put in, I found a quote about, insects in reframing the debate, and you're like, reminds you of Quatermass in the Pit, 5 million years to Earth. One of my favorites.
That's a deep,
our favorites as kids.
And that's an ancient alien movie. That's like ancient aliens coming to Earth, and then they're being reinterpreted as the devil. I mean, that's the devil coming up in the middle. I don't want to give it away. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. But the devil wells up out of the streets of London there on Hobbs Lane. Yeah.
But an insectoid kind of vision of the devil.
Yes,
But the idea, that was one of the first things that kind of connects this, the extraterrestrial, to our genetic memory and our idea of supernatural, like demons and the devil and everything connect to these things, and it's one of those things that brings it all together. And then I kept on thinking about the aliens using the trigger to knock us out, and then do whatever they're gonna do, and then we remember it as Bigfoot, or we remember it as UFOs, or we remember it as fairies or the devil,
an
or something like,
or an owl.
Or right there, the owls are not what they seem.
The owl is a mythic animal. It's a symbolic animal that goes right back. There's cave paintings of owls. The owls show up in every mythology all over the world. And so there's a mythic lore to the owl. It's there, and the owl as a. So people are seeing owls, right? They say, "Oh, driving home from, it was late at night, and then I saw this great big owl on the road, and it was 3 foot tall, and it was really weird. And then I got home, and I was 2 hours late. Something happened." So that happens a lot. I get that story a lot. If there's no such thing as the 3 foot tall owl, but that's what people are reporting. And then but why are they seeing an owl? I mean, so the owl is in mythologies, all the world's mythologies. One thread is that the owl is a messenger, and they are capable of traveling to other dimensions. Owls fly in the darkness. That becomes a metaphor for traveling to other realms, and then they would then return. So we have this mythic animal showing up in the UFO lore for reasons I can only dance around. I can only speculate about. I don't have answers to why. So I struggle with all these things, on these outlying things. Anyway, I didn't mean to hijack the thing with owls.
No, that's perfect. That's exactly. I mean, that's the owls there are almost like Douglas Adams' dolphins. They can travel. They're smarter. They do things that we don't know about, that we have no idea about. So I love those that owls idea,
and that it's some kind of archetype that's kind of hardwired in us, perhaps, that's triggered by certain experiences.
Yeah, I believe it is. Yeah. There's all kinds of So it's tapping into something on a deeper level than just a bird with big eyes. So And what's more important to me and more fascinating to me is the people who are seeing real owls, that tell of seeing real owls. And it's hard, what do people tell these stories? I'm like, oh my God, some of them are like, oh, that was a real owl. And some like, oh, that's a screen memory. But there's this blurry stuff in the middle. I can't, no one will ever solve, what it might be in these individual cases.
Well, and that's so for you guys playing at home, one of the first places that I saw the idea of an owl as a metaphor for a UFO or a non-terrestrial experience was in. We always come back to this on the show for some reason. Whitley Strieber's Communion.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that I also had my first hypnagogic trance a week after. So it was, that book always has a certain trauma for me, because I thought I wasn't it was just exactly as he described in the book. When you have that trance, you wake up and you see a bunch of shapes surrounding you, and you think and you feel weird and you're paralyzed and everything. And I had my first episode of sleep paralysis. I convinced myself, and I made it happen a week after finishing that book. So I think I have to talk to my therapist about it, but. Owls as interdimensional travelers, and that's what I mean. We'll have links to your website and your book in the show notes for this episode, Mike. But you really get into depth on that in the Messengers, right?
Oh my God, I feel like I've exhausted it, except the fact that I'm writing a second book on it. So I guess I didn't.
There's still a little bit more in there.
It's like, still got to squeeze all the lemon juice out of the lemon, So I'm like, I'm going to get that last drop out of there no matter what. So,
well, and a couple more questions for you guys. And number one, thank you for taking your Sunday afternoon with us, Mike, and Robbie, your Sunday evening over there. We appreciate it. But one of my favorite essays, actually, in the book, has to do with the Roswell Slides and the debunking of the Roswell Slides. And one of the reasons I enjoyed that so much is not that it even is about a UFO experience or anything like that. It really is just about a team of people working together to uncover the truth as quickly and fast as they can in a way that would not be possible at all 20 years ago.
Yeah, I'm really glad you enjoyed that, because I think it's a standout piece in the book in that it's not exploring any weird ufological theories or even not even addressing the nature of the phenomenon itself. What it's doing is it's taking a case study, which is the so-called Roswell Slides debacle, which happened in, I think it began in 2014, finished in 2015, which is when it was exposed. And what you had was a group of quite very well-known UFO personalities who for a number of years had been sort of murmuring about these potentially earth-shattering slides, Kodachrome slides, which had been unearthed in someone's attic, and they purported to show images of a deceased alien entity, which the promoters of the slides had linked very tenuously to the Roswell incident of 1947, and they viewed these slides as the smoking gun at last for Roswell as an alien event. And so attention started to focus in on this, and it became a big thing in the UFO subculture, and eventually it built into a major event, kind of a conference event.
A pay-per-view event, like WrestleMania.
Yeah, it was very, very much so, yeah. Very much so, like a pay-per-view event. People could stream it live, and they could attend with like thousands of attendees in Mexico. It was like it's held in Mexico. And a bunch of people, like I think several thousand people watched it live. And, money was spent, money was made. And but whilst all of this was happening, whilst all of this feverish speculation and claims were being thrown about online, you had a very small group of dedicated, essentially silent investigators, skeptical investigators, who were operating largely through social media, through a closed group on Facebook, and they were working across several countries and time zones, and they were all working towards a common goal, which was to try and show what these slides were not. It was very obvious to rational people who were not bound up in the Roswell belief system that the image seemed to resemble not necessarily an alien, but much more closely a mummified body of a child or a small person. And so the logical, first step would be to try and show that this was perhaps just that. Is it more likely to be the image of an alien, or is it more likely to be the image of a mummified child? Well, obviously,
right.
Comes to razor, you got to go with the mummified child. We don't know that for sure, but let's explore that option, and that's what they did. And very rapidly, they showed definitively that that's precisely what it was. And the whole case rested on the fact that what was publicly viewable of the slides was one particular image of what did look, like kind of alien in the loosest sense of the term,
right.
Body sort of laying down, and there was a placard placed next to this body, which was placed on sort of like a glass shelf, and if you were to look at it objectively, you would think, well, maybe it looks like it's in a museum setting, and the placard is something that has been placed there in a museum, not necessarily in some kind of a deep underground military facility. You wouldn't have it on display. Who would?
Right? Who designs the placard? Like, they have to send out for that. Like, if it says like alien baby on it or something like that, somebody at that placard company had to put that together, and they got to be like, well, guys, we should look into this.
Yeah, they obviously have to assassinate the people in the placard company, then, so you're leaving a trail of dead bodies everywhere.
That's not suspicious.
and so the team, the Roswell Slides research group, they decided to try and decipher what was on the placard, which was very blurry because the image that was presented to the public was blurred because it was from a freeze frame of the documentary, which is tied into this project, which is being promoted. So they got this blurry image, and they applied a de-blur process to the placard through commercial, publicly available software called Smart De-Blur. And it wasn't easy to do, but they did it relatively quickly, and they checked themselves and put them through kind of checks and balances kind of things, and they eventually showed definitively what the slide said, what the placard said. And the placard, sure enough, said, and I'm paraphrasing, mummified body of a 2-year-old boy. In fact, that's exactly what it said: mummified body of a 2-year-old boy.
Yeah, it's right there.
And so with that was it. The placard said it all. And so. But what was so startling and depressing about all of this is that the promoters of the slides and the people who had brought them to public attention in the first place, the UFO researchers, they had been looking at this for several years, and none of them during this time had thought to try and figure out what the placard said, or to try to place the body as something other than an alien.
In their defense, a full version of Photoshop is like $700.
It's outrageous.
It's not even Photoshop. So they thought, well, it looks vaguely like an alien, therefore it must be an alien, right? And so they made all of these assumptions, jump to conclusions very quickly because they were so embedded in their belief system, which had come to define their identity. And this is what's crucial for me. I say that this, the reader can draw their own conclusions as to what motivated the slides promoters, and some people will indeed accuse them of perpetrating an outright cynical hoax, and perhaps some of the people involved, were guilty of that. But I think for some of the people who are involved with it, the core promoters of it, the core people who brought it to public attention in the first place, for me, I think that it's more a case of blind belief than conscious deception, because I understand that believer mindset because I've been in it before, and especially when you've defined your whole ufological career through one particular case, Roswell in this example, then you're on a search for the Holy Grail all the time, and when you think you've found it, it becomes intoxicating. And they didn't stop for even a moment to think of any other explanations, and they thought that looks like an alien. It's got to be the Roswell body, and we're just gonna run with it. And that's what they did, and they never stopped. And so while they were busy doing that, again, you had a small group of rational, sound-minded people who sat down and said, well, let's look at the most logical explanation and see if we can prove it. And indeed they did, and they did it within a matter of days. So years of people being misled, consciously or not, was kind of undone by a few days' work of it was more than a few days. They were working on it for months, but they actually de-blurred the thing within a few days and then announced it. So that for me was the triumph of the skeptics, and it shows that skepticism is essential to this field. And people within the UFO community, they get really down on the skeptical approach, and they say, skeptics are the bad guys and stuff like that. But here, obviously that's just simply not the case. Skepticism is essential, and you should have the most logical, rational explanation for anything.
And to go with that a little bit, and the reason I kind of wanted to bring that up, number one, is to show, because really, I mean, all of us have felt that on one side. You've been like, man, skeptics, I hate those guys. Well, Allison, you felt that?
What I felt is not that I dislike skepticism, but I think we need to delineate here that skepticism. I think all of us, on this show today, would be yay skepticism. We agree with skepticism, but we have to draw a line, because what we're seeing today is really kind of dogmatic cynicism, and also it's aligned with atheism, which is not. To me, atheism, I mean, that's a religion. I mean, that's not a scientific belief. We don't know what's beyond. So, for you to say definitively that there is nothing, to me, just kind kind of takes everything you said you were for and calls it into question. So, I think we're all into skepticism. What we're not into is, this kind of crushing limitation of materialism, because, I think we've all seen that there's a little bit more to the world than that, and even, the limitations of human perception show that.
The goal of the book is to shift and reframe the debate outside the prison of belief, yet also beyond the razor wire of scientific dogmatism. And that's a line that several other contributors sort of seek to tread in this piece. And you've got Micah Hanks, for example, saying modern skepticism can, I think, be summarized in many instances as an ideology around which a social movement has been built, one that today also runs tangent with atheism and as a paradoxically evangelical attitude about the supremacy of science above all other forms of knowledge. So it's sort of trying to tread that middle ground. And M.J. Banias also says something similar in his essay. He says, many of my colleagues in ufological circles would argue that it is essential for UFO discourse to move away from the theological and towards the scientific method. He says, I would agree with them. However, the razor cuts both ways, and the ideological mechanisms of the sciences can be as dogmatic as the religious tenets of UFO believers.
Well, and I think that's exactly right. And the people, those are the kind of people we're talking about who are just who shut off to it. They're already shut off to it. They're like, well, sure, there might be, there's probably aliens out there, but they're not here. And those are the kind of things. It's they're converted in their own kind of way. And I think that's what everybody is a little like, we don't want to be like that. And that's why this book is valuable, because if you're converted one way, it's going to force you to think another way. And then the next chapter, you're going to think another way. And then the next essay, you're going to be like, I can't decide, brain aneurysm. And so that's kind of where you're going to go with it. But also, I was thinking about the importance of, first of all, we are culpable on this show a little bit of the Roswell Slides. We know Don Schmitt. He's from Wisconsin. He lives in Wisconsin. I've seen him socially in situations, and I've interviewed Don several times. But then when the Roswell Slides, when I saw this and I saw he was going to be associated with it, I got in touch with him immediately. I'm like, Don, we have to have you on the show, and we have to ask you about it. And we talked about it after when the debunking happened too. But we had a whole episode called "The Smoking Gun." And be like, Don, what can we see on May 5th? Cinco de Mayo, you will see the slides of the Roswell. And the whole thing ended up just being a cluster. It just was so ridiculous. And you see the slides. And, Robbie, I really think that your view of their motivations is, it's very sunny. You're like, well, I think they just wanted to believe so bad. I think it's a little more mercenary than that, but not necessarily in a bad level. I think and I like Don Schmitt too. Milwaukee Paranormal Conference, we hung out. He's a really nice guy. And some of his research on Roswell, that stuff, his original research on Roswell is really important because he got the interviews before everybody died. And I really admire that. That he got at least the people to interview that said they saw the craft and the materials and everything. But I think their motivation might have been, let's try to make some money so we can go back to Roswell to dig. The importance of skepticism is such that they debunked those slides in it felt like 10 minutes. It felt like 10 minutes after the Roswell Slides came out, everybody's like, well, there's the placard. Good night, everybody.
Just brutal. And we saw it coming. I just saw it coming weeks and weeks and weeks before it happened. And
there was a point a year ahead of it. I remember we've uncovered these slides and this is but we have to keep them secret. And as soon as I read that, I'm like, oh, this is going to tank.
This is going to be a setup.
This is going to spiral the drain. And this
but
is poison.
like science, this has to be repeatable. You have to be able to withstand scrutiny if you want to change people's minds. And that's what I think that guys like Don want to do. They have so much witness testimony. They've written books before he went off and did something like this that was, that feels like a hoax to the rest of us. Before that, it feels like, well, we have all this testimony. We did all this research. We found this stuff, and still everybody thinks we're cranks. So we might as well go with the cranks to make some cash, and so we can fund the research that we need to eventually find an actual smoking gun that will convince the world that something happened. So I think it's a little bit I think they still believe, but I think they knew that this was crap. And they're just like, well, we can focus the attention on it. We can do something positive with this money eventually, because once we get the evidence we need, we're going to have the last laugh. And that's my particular take on the motivations.
Well, you may be right, Mike. And if that is the case, then boy, they did not think that through.
Because it just made it look dumb.
It was just painful to watch. But on the other hand, just and having us talk about this, I mean, if you watch what happened, I mean, you can really learn a lot from it. There's so much in there about, wanting to believe and, possibly financial interest, so there's a lot of teaching. There are a lot of teachings in what happened, even though it was really, really hard to go through.
Yeah, and I think what's so good about it is Kurt Collins, who wrote the slides essay in the book. It's called "What's Wrong with This Picture." He could have been absolutely brutal and scathing in that essay, and he's not at all. He is incredibly calm and balanced, and he doesn't go after anyone personally or anything like that. He just methodically documents exactly how they went about their own investigation and how they eventually debunked the slides. And it has huge value, I think, because it is the definitive accounting of how they went about doing that. And that really, the slides debacle, I think, is one of the most high-profile and damaging ufological blunders of the 21st century, certainly, and probably of the last sort of 20 years or more. And it's almost been like, the UFO community kind of has amnesia now. They kind of collectively have wiped that from the consciousness because they were so invested in it being true. And when it was so brutally debunked, as you say, so quickly, it's just like, oh, let's forget about that. Our egos are bruised. Not just the people who promoted it, but the people who believed it and who bought into it and who so they then it's like, well, we don't want to acknowledge that. Let's just move on to the next thing now. Let's just let's focus on Tom DeLonge now. Let's just focus on Tom DeLonge. Let's forget about the Roswell Slides. Right. The next thing that offers the truth is Tom DeLonge. And we could do a whole show on Tom DeLonge. I've got a lot to say about Tom DeLonge,
and we will. We will eventually, really. And when the truth happens, now this is why I kind of want to get to the last question and talk about disclosure a second. But when disclosure finally happens, you think they're going to set it up like a monster truck rally? You think it's going to be Sunday. We'll give you the whole ship, but you'll only need the edge. That kind of. It's just so silly that it just right. I was like, this is not going to blow my mind because it's not going to be set up where they have disclosure T-shirts. It's not going to be like, get $15, man. It comes in like we got spaghetti straps for chicks.
Okay, well, I said I wasn't going to talk about Tom DeLonge, but you've just right. So you just said, "Oh, disclosure won't come with T-shirts." Well, tell that to Tom DeLonge, who's selling disclosure T-shirts. Okay, so he has literally set up an actual store, an actual physical store that you can go into and buy, and it's all devoted to his to the Stars production company and clothing line, and you can sell like skateboards and T-shirts, all hooked into his alien disclosure book, Secret Machines. You can buy Secret Machines baseball caps and apparel and key rings. I'm not making this up, right? So he's marketing disclosure. He's saying that his books are the forerunner to this government announcement, which is going to come relatively soon, and that they're feeding all of this information to him. And in the meantime, he's set up a whole business around, literally a business around it. He's not even being, he's not even being kind of, he has no problem with marketing it and commercializing it, and he's sort of saying, well, this is what I'm doing. I'm a businessman and I'm just going to make as much money as I can off this concept of disclosure. So actually it is a commercial product, but this hasn't kind of it doesn't seem to be worrying people who are supporting what Tom DeLonge is saying, because the point is if there is some kind of massive government announcement coming that's going to shatter the global system, well, Tom, it doesn't seem to bother Tom DeLonge. I mean, isn't his T-shirt business going to go down the tubes when disclosure happens? Like, are people really going to be going, you know what I'm going to be doing now? Now the economy's gone down the tubes, and now, you know, we've got free energy and there's aliens walking around the streets. I think I'm going to go online and buy one of Tom DeLonge's T-shirts. I mean, you don't do that if you don't set up a business like that if you actually think that anything is going to change in the world. You know,
right? I feel like he's playing like a huge alternate reality game based on his personal brand of being a rock star.
He is, and he is, and you know, when I mock Tom DeLonge here, I don't know Tom DeLonge. I have nothing against him personally. He seems like a really nice guy, and I'd like to talk to him at some point, maybe. But you know, my issue here is that he's leading people astray, and I don't doubt for a second that he's in contact with people in positions of authority in the military-industrial complex. We know that he is through
the John Podesta email,
right, and through other stuff. We know that he has got these contacts. But what's less widely known is that, you know, the information that they're feeding him is totally in line with all of the previous disinformation that's been fed to other disinformants over the past 3 or 4 decades, and the narrative that he's spinning is just an extension of what's come before. It's no different. It's touching on all of the core themes which absolve the powers that be of complicity in an evil cover-up, or at least it excuses the cover-up. It justifies it, saying that it's in our best interests, that there's hostile alien entities or life forms, that the military-industrial complex has been doing its very best to act in our interests, and it's had to do so covertly. So it kind of portrays a very positive image, actually, of the national security state. It's a very self-serving image, and it's you know. So the point is that if you have so deeply distrusted, not you, Mike, but the UFO community have deeply distrusted the powers that be for so long, and that deep distrust is something that does characterize popular ufology. If you so deeply distrust the powers that be on the UFO subject, then why would you believe what they tell a rock star? You know, why would you believe what they tell anyone? Why would you believe what they tell you directly? The point is that if they are characterized by deception, which has been proven over the years, then why do you believe what they are telling you? Well, the reason you believe is because you know that you don't have any answers, and nor will you probably have any answers within your lifetime as to what this enigma represents. But you want so desperately for someone in a position of power to have those answers. Whether you trust them or not, you're going to make that decision to trust them in the event that they give it to you, even though it goes up against all of your best judgment. You're going to trust them because you just desperately want it to be true, no matter what they tell you. The point is that the powers that be do not have the answers. They cannot possibly have the answers. They might have their own answers, and they might have, you know, maybe they have got alien bodies. But if they have, so what? That's not going to tell them. That's not going to, you know, reveal the ultimate truth of what we're dealing with. It's so much more complicated than that, and we're just a bunch of monkeys. We don't understand what we're dealing with, and so I don't care how much money you throw at this problem behind the scenes, billions, trillions of dollars over decades, you're still only going to be able to scratch the surface of what you're dealing with. So what can they possibly disclose, you know, other than ignorance, really? And so that's why you should never really believe anything that comes from any you know, anyone in a position of power on this subject, because all they've ever done is lie and conceal and deceive, and that makes sense. Of course they're going to do that. I would do that in their position. Anyone would,
right?
But the point is you don't throw yourself at their feet and say, oh, thank you, Savior, I accept what you're telling me. I accept that. You know, you're not going to find the answers. They're not to this problem from the powers that be. I'm sorry, you're just not.
And why we would ever believe a guy that thought that What's My Age Again could be a worthwhile single, like blows my... I mean, the first album was pretty good, but I think Success just killed him. Anyway, that's just me. That's a completely different issue. Allison?
Well, I just wanted to say that, you know, what's really compelling to me is that there is this deception because it's going on a grand scale. And, you know, it has been for decades. And to me, this really shows that there ultimately is something to the phenomena. And that's what I think that is enough disclosure in a way. If you are paying attention, you realize that there is something going on.
Yeah. Mike, what's your opinion on disclosure?
I could care less about disclosure. I don't have anything to prove. I don't care. No one has to disclose anything to me. Like I say something that effect in the essay, like, I've seen them. I feel like my life has been impacted by this weirdness, and in a way that's, I don't like. What are they gonna? I mean, they'll do that. Like, I get up in the morning and I try to catalog people's experiences in a way that's engaging and that people can, I'm listening to real people tell their accounts and tell their stories. And the stories are, people cry on the phone. I've had people cry in real life, and I've cried, and it's just like, there's something going on. I don't need someone to tell me that. And I would say it's a genuine mystery. And how, I don't care. I don't care. I remember Robbie and I, we were driving in and he was driving me, and I was on the wrong side of the road when we were in England, and I was like trying to put my foot on the brake every time we'd go around the left turn and stuff like that. And there was no brake on my side of the car, so anyway, but we were going to kill me, mate. Thing and stuff. It's like I don't need anyone in authority to tell me what I already know, right? I mean, that's what I don't care. So when I worked and did a lot of outdoor stuff, and I would work with kids, and we'd go in the mountains, and I would go camping with them, and we'd spend a month in the mountains. And, you check in kids, they're young adults, they would be college age or, so they'd have a little talk with them, and you'd say, check in, how's everything going? This is a challenging trip, and then what's going on? And it's like, what's going on in my life? So my parents don't understand me, and I just need them to change. I just need my parents to change, so they understand me. And I'm like, listen, like, I'm a little older than you. Your parents are never going to change. You are not going to change your parents. The only thing you can do is be a better you. The only thing you can do is be a better self. And that's kind of like, I just feel like there's these people kind of like only if they only did what I want them to do, if the government only did what I want them to do, then everything would be fine. I'm like, listen, this is like the Politburo. It's like they're lying, like nobody cares. Right. They never do what you want them to do. The only thing you can do in this arena is be your best self and work to the highest ethical and highest level you can work at do the best work you can do, and that is, and you're going to put ripples in the pond, and maybe those ripples will make a difference, but you are waiting for someone else, begging someone else to do it for you. It ain't going to work.
And that is complete agreement that I have with you on that, Mike.
So I got all fired up.
Yeah, no, please do get fired up. And I think about this, I think about disclosure, and I think about people talking about it. I'm like, first of all, why would the government do it unless they had a specific agenda? And then you can't trust what they have to say anyway, because obviously they have an agenda, So it's just like, why would you think that, okay, no, and also Donald Trump is president. The guy from The Apprentice, the guy speaking of WrestleMania, he was in WrestleMania 4. The guy from Home Alone 2 is the president of the United States. And whatever side you sit in the political spectrum or whatever you think, do you not think that Donald Trump wouldn't be like, I get to be the one who tells the world about aliens? You're damn right I'm going to do that. He'd be like, alien. Or however he'd say that, China. When he says China, he'd be like, aliens, they're here, baby. Or whatever he'd say. I grabbed him by the tentacle. But the whole thing... But don't you think Donald Trump would have already disclosed that? Like the first day, he's like, "Lies, guys, they show me the bodies. It's awesome." Like, I just don't think he'd be able to.
Well, I think to be fair to the disclosurists, I think there's that if there is such information being held behind the scenes, then it would be highly compartmentalized, strictly on a need to know basis, and Donald Trump would certainly not have a need to know. You would not trust Donald Trump with anything like that. So I think if they do have this information, there's no way in hell that they would trust him with it, precisely because they know that within minutes of telling him, it'd be tweeted. Yeah. So but
he'd have a picture with the alien body with the "Make America Great Again" hat on. All right, guys, I want to thank you very much for joining us. The book is UFOs Reframing the Debate. It's edited by Robbie Graham, and there's a great essay written by Mike Clelland in there too. You guys are really going to enjoy it. Where can we find the book?
It's available on Amazon. It's available through Barnes and Noble, iBookstore, pretty much any good online bookstore. And you can also find kind of a lot more information about it on my website, which is robbiegraham.uk.
So you guys gonna check it out. Now, Mike, where can people find or read your blog articles and learn more about you and your writing?
I have a website. It's a blog. It's called Hidden Experience. You just type in Hidden Experience, all one word, .blogspot.com. If you Google my name, or if you actually, you know what? If you Google UFOs Owls, I'm the first thing that comes up. So, so I'm pretty easy to find, and the book is available through Amazon and on my website. And you can go to your local bookstore and just ask, and they can type it into their thing and just order it for you. And so hopefully support some little Main Street bookstore before it goes under.
Yeah. You can read it in Meat Space. And Allison, where can people find your weirdo face?
MilwaukeeGhost.com.
Awesome. Thank you very much for joining us today, guys. Everybody, make sure you can find the show notes, othersidepodcast.com/148, and you can have all the links there to Robbie's site, Mike's site, and Allison's site. So now we know what Robbie thinks about Tom DeLonge from Blink-182.
Indeed.
You know, and the thing is, I thought that Tom DeLonge from Blink-182, I was kind of excited when I heard he was into this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, number one, I was kind of jealous because, like, he got famous off writing 4-chord songs, and then he was just like, okay, now I'm going to look into UFOs, and I'm doing this thing. I'm like, wow, this guy has an awesome career. He's totally interesting.
Right.
But then, like, there's so many weird claims associated with the book, his Secret Machines book. The idea that, well, this is fiction, but I have a nonfiction coming out, and I've got sources in the government that are telling me things. I get skeptical about it. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, Tom. Like, let's go back and understand that first album is Dude Red is a really good album, and you got me there. Like, 1998, I listened to Blink-182 all the time. But just the idea that the people in the government would be like, who we should tell our secrets to? The dude from Blink-182. Right? And now, Wendy, you've seen Blink-182 live, right?
Once, yes.
Okay, you saw, and I haven't seen them live, so I can't say. So when you saw, I think this is a while ago. This is in their heyday.
Oh yeah, I mean this was 17 years ago.
Right.
That I saw them.
So this is when they.
Oh man.
They were hot with two T's.
Yes,
hot with two T's.
yes.
And weren't you like, it's just all poop jokes, or is
Well, yeah. I mean, it kind of reminded me of Beavis and Butthead on stage, but not as funny, and punctuated by songs. But it was like, there was just a lot of talking, and it was not entertaining talking to me.
Sure.
But then again, the crowd was, there were a lot of like teeny boppers in the crowd.
Sure.
So maybe they found that endearing or something.
Hilarious.
I don't know. I just wanted to hear the music personally. So
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I like a little stage banter, but it was just a bit much for me.
But the thing is, I think of that story. Even that story's old. I think about you. I think about you talking about it every time. I think I see Tom DeLonge in like a video or talking serious or being like, "I'm really gonna find out. I'm gonna get to the bottom of this UFO phenomenon."
Yeah.
And saying that he's gonna do it. I think about you telling that story. And so
Sorry,
So then
Mike.
I think about a government official. I think about somebody from Area 51 in like 2000 taking his 14-year-old daughter to a Blink-182 concert. And I think about this Area 51 official's like, okay, oh yeah, I gotta go see this band. And then he sees them and they're just making all, genitalia jokes, juvenile humor, things like that. And hey, I've made plenty myself. I'm not saying it. I'm not, just gonna say it. But this guy seeing them and then going, you know what? This is the guy I'm gonna tell my secrets to.
Right.
I need to find this guy and I need to tell him that aliens do exist. And so so you have kind of ruined Tom DeLonge as a disclosure agent for me.
I'm so sorry, Mike. I did not intend for that to happen.
You
But
spoiled it.
my experience was so far ahead of his whole paranormal,
Right.
UFO involvement.
Yeah,
So.
you weren't gonna, like, nobody was gonna predict
No.
that. Okay, now, so I love the fact that Robbie's willing to go off on it, because I agree with him. Even though I kind of enjoy the fact that he's playing with perceptions. I enjoy the fact that we have somebody who's a good media manipulator. Not a spoiler, but there's a good media who's getting mainstream media attention for it. Tom DeLonge gets mentioned in the John Podesta emails, and all of a sudden, more people are talking about UFOs.
Right.
And it is bringing out the skeptics. And I think that's a great thing, because I think that this kind of stuff, the UFO phenomena particularly, needs to stand up to criticism. It needs to stand up to skeptics. And I think the fact that we talk about the Roswell Slides extensively in the interview, and you guys remember the Roswell Slides. we had Don Schmitt on the show. It's the smoking gun. We're all excited that something's really going to happen here. Mm-hmm. And then it's just, it's ridiculous crap. And so there's just a profound disappointment. And the thing is, if it's not that this research cannot be taken seriously the way it is, but if it wants to be in the same league as, well, regular sciences, or think about the things that Dr. Nancy Zingroni is doing at the Parapsychological Association, where they need to repeat ability of experiments. If we're talking about this as a psychological phenomenon that you're trying to study and find connections between different experiencers and UFO things that happen, you need to have some kind of critical rigor that goes into it.
Absolutely. And
that's the thing. Otherwise, we're just going to get more Roswell Slides every time. It's going to be a money grab, and that's it. So, So if we do, if we want less Tom DeLonge's and more Dr. J. Allen Hynek's, we're just going to have to all be a little bit more serious and maybe even take some of the entertainment value out of it. And that obviously breaks my heart. Because the sensational stories are the ones that usually are the most exciting.
Yeah, the most fun.
Yeah, because when somebody tells you a believable UFO story, like, oh my God, I looked outside and I saw these two dots in the sky that they couldn't have been a plane. It was going around and I have no idea what it was. Compared to, they took me up on the ship and, I was on the ship. They touched me. I'm upset about it.
Yeah.
Right. And so, those are the stories you want to hear. The guy that says, I saw a UFO. I saw two lights in the sky. Well, great. Anyway, what we're talking about here is disappointment. The Roswell Slides, when the smoking gun turned out to be a pea shooter, we were all really disappointed. And that's why we think that this week's Sunspot Paranormal song is most appropriately one of our saddest songs about disappointment.
Mm.
This is called The Breach.
It takes you on the tip of my tongue. I'm trying to hold your breath inside of my lungs. Ooh, draw me away. Ooh, draw me a mist. We stand outside ourselves, so please don't move. When I scream fire inside a crowded room, mediocrity surrounds me, to the point of tragedy, and we can walk along the breach. We can walk along the breach.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. You can find us online at othersidepodcast.com. Until next time, see you on the other side.
Oop, real quick, Mike.
What's that, Wendy? I was already out the door.
I know, I was trying to catch you. I saw you heading that way, but we're not done yet.
Why? Oh, how could I forget our Patreon community?
How could you, Mike? How could you?
Well, the problem is I'm a jerk, because only a jerk would not remember the coolest people we know. That is the See You on the Other Side Patreon community.
And we always, we sound funny, but we really do mean that we appreciate each and every one of our community members in the Patreon.
Mm-hmm.
You make it possible for us to do these things and to keep the podcast going and to keep creating new songs and new videos and all kinds of fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you. And if you'd like to join our community, how can they do that, Mike?
They can do that if they check out othersidepodcast.com/donate. That's othersidepodcast.com/donate.
And patrons, mark your calendars because we've got another hangout coming up on June 29th.
Yeah, we're going to have a lot to talk about that week because we'll be coming back from the Haunted America Conference in Alton, Illinois. And so we're going to see new presentations, new speakers, new weird stuff for you. And we'll talk about other Patreons and ask questions and things like that. And looking forward to, and of course, we can't forget to say thank you to Dr. Ned. Dr. Ned is on the Patreon level where he gets a shout out in every single episode. So Dr.
Thanks, Ned.
Thank you, my man.
And thanks for coming to our show last Friday.
Yeah, and it was good to see you at the show too, buddy. We'll see you at Summerfest in July. Anyway, everybody in Patreon world, thank you very much. Everybody who's not in Patreon world, get there.
And thanks for listening anyway. We love you too.
Kisses. I was on the ship. They touched me. I'm upset about it.